these Mexican roads.
All right, guys, so M5 time. And this car is probably my favorite car out of all of them that I have. It's probably not the most sentimental. It's just like my favorite in terms of owning, driving, experiencing. There's obviously much more sentimental cars in here, such as this guy right here, such as the Silver Lightning out there, Stalker Vert over there, so on and so forth. But I think you guys know where I'm going. So this car, I really only got to enjoy last year for a couple of days. In reality, I was having misfiring issues by the end of the previous season, and with COVID and everything else, it was impossible to get coils. I ended up getting a factory one that I isolated out and just put that in there, but my factory coils were pretty much at the end of their life, and I think they had been swapped before at some point, but I wanted to upgrade the coils, and that's what took forever. So I've got these right here, all my aftermarket coils. These are made for boost applications, and those have finally been installed. But then I started facing the craziest fuel issues, and it almost, you know, at first I thought it was just the pump. So I've got an Aeromotive pump in here, and you know, they're known to overheat at times. In fact, the one that was in there overheated on me twice in Dubai if my tank was down past a half. And of course, we're talking 120, 125 degree temperatures. So in Canada, it was weird when the car just didn't want to run anymore after it had been running for a while. And so I replaced the pump, I replaced the fuel filter, I replaced the fuel pressure regulator, I replaced O2 sensors. I was like going down the rabbit hole of BMW trying to find the cause of this problem. And throughout all of those iterations, what we come to find out is that the car would stay running if the gas cap was off. So that kind of pointed to a vapor lock type scenario. And I put the fuel pressure gauge on it, which it's kind of conveniently, the Schrader valve is located just on the underside, driver's side frame rail underneath the driver's door. And you could almost see the gauge, everything would be good, 60 PSI. And then all of a sudden it would kind of go down and then like burp and catch itself, then go down, then catch itself. But it would just gradually go to the point where there was no fuel and the car would stall and die. So that's where things left off. The gas cap stayed off, and that's how the car got to storage. That's how the car got out of storage. And then ultimately the car got shipped down here. And by the time, actually before, when it came out of storage, my friend messaged me and he's like, man, your car won't start anymore. Like, do you think it's the key because of the chip in there? So come to find out, we knew that the car was running pig rich throughout this whole scenario, and swapped out the plugs. The car started running again, but it was just like, it was hazing, guys. Like, it was that bad, just like black smoke coming out at idle. And needless to say, when I got the car here, when I first started it up, I swear it was running on like 5 cylinders. I took it for a blast down the road, cleared things up best I could, and now I've been tinkering with the car some more. So what ended up happening, I found out that there is a fuel tank pressure release valve that is actually under the main plenum here. So I had to take all of the plenum off and apart. There's vacuum lines down there, the throttle body actuator. This is actually a beautiful sight to see, and I'm sorry I didn't get that on film. You know, there's individual trumpets underneath this cover and individual throttle bodies for each cylinder that are actuated by, and this motor is 100% symmetrical. There's a left side and a right side, and it's like you could cut this motor down the center, and everything that's over here belongs over there. And you can just even see those 2 big holes in the back of the firewall. That's for the HVAC, so cabin air filters. I've got this side off because I needed access to the brake fluid reservoir, so that way I could keep my eye on it as I'm swapping out the pads in the front here. So I went through it. The valve actually worked, and I blew air through it. I dropped all of the evap system and charcoal canister and everything else that's underneath the rear tire well on the driver's side, blew air through everything. And I did find one vacuum line that didn't look like it was in very good shape, so I replaced that as it was coming off the passenger side bank going to, I think, some sort of like EGR purge valve. But again, a vacuum leak is a vacuum leak, and this car would typically have an air intake and air box going this way, air intake, air box going that way, but because it's supercharged, things have changed. And from factory, they have mass air flow meters on both sides. This car no longer has a mass air flow meter. It's running an Alpha N tune. And the thing with the Alpha N is that it is operating based on ideal conditions. And the littlest thing that could go wrong is gonna just make this car not gonna wanna run properly. So I put everything back together. I took it for a ride. Everything so far so good, knock on wood. Needless to say, with all of the richness and overfueling and everything else that was happening with the car, I knew that the oil was compromised. So that is one thing that I've been letting drain overnight. In fact, I've gone so to the extreme here that not only did I pull the drain plug and then pour oil in the filler neck to kind of flush things out, I actually even dropped all of my oil cooler lines. So you see these two there are going to the thermostat, and then I dropped this guy over here off the bottom side of the oil cooler. So all the oil is done dripping out of here. And yes, this is all aftermarket, guys. This is all add-on after the fact. So now that that's all drained, I can hook all that stuff back up. I can pour in my new oil, get my new Canon oil filter installed in there. I even like sucked everything out of the filter housing, just trying to get any of that gassy oil out of the system of this thing. So that will be replaced. I'm swapping out the front brake pads. This car's got a D2 Racing 8-pot setup in the front, and I can't remember if it's 6. That's 4 in the rear. So massive brakes all the way around, and just an absolute joy and blast to drive. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish up doing the brake pads. It's really simple. Like, you literally 2 bolts right here and your pads slide out off the top. Super awesome design to be able to get your stuff swapped out real quick. We'll get all of our oil lines hooked back up, pour in our fresh oil, and that should be pretty much it. I hope that this thing is gonna run the way that it should. If you guys are curious to know more about this car, I've got some old videos of it in Dubai. I got one on the dyno. The car made 541 rear wheel on this setup, and that's running at about 9 PSI, kind of depending on the conditions. And yeah, beast, love it. And you know, it's designed, this is an Autobahn car. We got 6 gears here. It is manual. I've got a UUC UUC stage 2 clutch with a lightweight flywheel. This is a rare actual Hamann edition BMW. So if you guys aren't familiar with Hamann, it would be like your Celine of Mustangs. And you can see here, instead of BMW badges, I've actually got Hamann badges. I've got full Hamann exhaust, front to back, including long tube headers. And the exhaust sounds phenomenal on this thing. I love it. It's got the Hamann splitters, side skirts, Hamann wheels. And what else do we got? The interior, this is pretty much factory. Imola red on black interior with titanium trim. Sometimes they came with wood grain. I'm very thankful I've got the titanium. So that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and knock out these last few things, and hopefully this thing is gonna be okay on the, before I forget. So with the car running so rich, and like, you can imagine all the carbon buildup and everything else that was happening, my wideband gauge wasn't even working. So I have taken out all of my O2 sensors. So here are the 2 downstream, here's the 2 upstream. So upstream is before catalytic converter, downstream is after catalytic converter, although this car does not have cats. So upstream, downstream, and then here is my wideband O2. So I have cleaned all these off. I used carb and choke cleaner, which it says it's safe for O2 sensors and catalytic converters, and hopefully it will allow my wideband to start working again, and hopefully any weird oddball readings that the car was getting will be restored from these being cleaned. If for whatever reason cleaning them did not work, and I wasn't getting codes, but to me it's just like a matter of time, and if the readings aren't 100%, again, those O2 sensor readings are so critical for the Alpha N tune that I want to make sure that they're all reading correctly. So gonna go ahead, get everything bolted back in and get this car back down on the ground, and hopefully I'll be able to tell as soon as it starts up, because it'll be a cold start, and if it starts up and idles proper and isn't puffing all kinds of black smoke, then we know we're in good shape. So let's see what happens there. Let's get the time lapse going and see if I can start to enjoy this thing on the street once again. So in case you guys are wondering, well, why are the pads yellow? Well, the pads are yellow because they're actually EBC Racing yellow stuff pads, and there are green stuff, red stuff, yellow stuff, and I think blue stuff, but yellow is the only one that has a cross reference that works with these D2 8-pot calipers, which is on the racy side of things. I forget how it goes. I think my Viper truck has actually got the greens on it, which is more for street, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong with that, but I think there's one stage past yellow, which is like ultra race, and could be black or it could be red. I forget how the whole color chart goes, but these should work well for what it is, because out of all the vehicles that I own, I probably drive this one the most aggressively, believe it or not, but it is true. So there we go, brand new brake pads up front. The rears are actually fine, so I'm not gonna worry about those guys. And in fact, I don't even know where the rear pads are, because the front ones were in the coil boxes. Maybe I didn't even order the rear ones, because rear ones didn't need to be changed. But anyways, let's move on to the oil. Ooh. Oh, look at the mess I made. Damn it. I knew I should have kept my eye on that. Good thing I had the lid off. So I'm gonna spray a bunch of brake clean down in there. I'm gonna get that cleaned up. So that is one thing, as your pads wear down, and if you look at the pads that came out, look, the sensor, or the dash light was doing its job by telling me that there wasn't too much material left on these pads. So yeah, the fluid probably, look at this one's really low. So anyways, those will get tossed. I'm gonna get my mess cleaned up here, spray some brake clean down there to make sure that there's no paint or anything else that brake fluid shouldn't be touching, and we'll go ahead and get the oil done. I actually took a spray bottle nozzle and stuck it in there and squirted it into a little bottle and got the fluid level back down to where it should be, so it's not overflowing or doing anything like that. Now, O2 sensor time. So I'll bring you guys down here underneath the car. It's actually cold down here because of that chilly weather out there. All right, you can actually see this beautiful Hamann mid pipe here. There's some of my long tube headers, and there is our upstream bung, our wideband bung, and our downstream bung. See, she's straight pipe pretty much all the way back to those Hamann mufflers. right, so car's back down on the ground. Check the oil again. Of course, once the car starts up, it's gonna go through the filter, it's gonna go through the cooler, and I'm probably gonna have to add most of that quart of oil. However, it's always a good starting place. A little bit less to add is easier than too much and have to drain. Let's see here. It's right up to full. All right, so the moment of truth, cold start in the shop. I really don't want to open up the door because I've actually got the heat on because it's so cold outside. That's right, it's over freezing. It's under freezing, I should say. That's how cold it is out there. All right, so it's too cold and getting dark yesterday by the time I finished this guy up. It's still cold, it's still windy, but I'm gonna start this thing up. We'll get it outside, see how it runs, maybe go for a quick little test drive and see how it performs. Okay, definitely starts off pretty rich still. Obviously it's going to be smoking in the cold here. You can tell it's a little rich burning. But we're idling okay. Let's go for a ride here and the car is definitely, I forgot how much it hates the cold. I don't know what it is, just that initial takeoff when I first start the car up, just like burr, 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 burr. Oh, it's a really bad sound, or impression of the sound, but it's doing something. So whatever, let's put some miles on, see if we can throw a check engine light, and break in these front brake pads a little bit. See, like there, it's fine. Can really hear the blow off. Wideband gauge is working, which is good. Traction control is also working. All right guys, so I just made it home, and as I was driving along, I put on 32 kilometers, which is a pretty good amount. I would think that if anything was seriously wrong, we would have thrown a code. The wideband gauge started working again. You know, we're probably right around 14.2 at idle. It was around 14.5 driving around. So everything looked good there. I was making pretty much close to about 10 pounds of boost, which with the colder weather, I'm not surprised. And the more I was driving, the better the car was getting. And that is one thing to keep in mind. I had just cleared the codes. There was a lot of codes that were on the car before I started doing a lot of these little maintenance items. A lot of sensors got disconnected. And even though the car is turned off and all that stuff, these cars still know. Like, it knew I disconnected the throttle position sensors and all that other good stuff. So needless to say, there's probably going to be a little bit of relearning involved in this whole ordeal. So I'm really happy with the outcome so far. I'm going to keep driving it. The car isn't dying. The car is super responsive, super fun. I'm sure you could probably hear some of that blow off in the background and some of the driving around video. But that's it. Whew. Other than that wind, you know, we're not puffing black smoke anymore. You can see all the carbon that I've blown out. Look at that. There was probably still carbon deposits. Ooh, let me get back in the car. There's probably still a whole bunch of carbon all within the system, just from, you know, all of that super running rich situation. So that's it. So far so good, fingers crossed. Thank you guys for tuning in and following along on this non-Fox body video. So if this is your first time getting the BMW experience, I highly recommend it. It's they're amazing. You can't compare them to a Fox body, but you can definitely have some serious fun and enjoyment out of these cars when they're running right. So with that said, thank you again for all your support. Thank you to watching to the end. We'll see you next time here on the Infamous Project.